Okay, I know we're happy to accept those.
Yep.
Yep, okay. Right, declaration of interests. We've got a few things in here, haven't we? So I think I need to declare, if nothing else, that I'm a resident of St. Christopher's Drive, because we are talking about the complaints process.
I'm a resident of St. Peter's Road.
That's reference a tree.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Public participation. Nadine, you said you weren't talking to it this evening. No, that's okay. And then consideration of requests from interested parties. Not aware of any. Hi Val, we just started. We've just done declaration of interest. I don't know if you have any.
Sorry about that. I tried ages ago and got lost somewhere, but there we are. Found you.
Yeah. So declaration of interest, Val, have you got any?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.
Quick look.
Hi Peter.
Good evening.
Just doing declarations of interest.
Oh, I have none.
I have one on the Jones Strong Centre in that I'm not personally involved anymore, but I've got a strong interest. Don't know if that counts.
Okay, thank you. Right, and with that, it looks like it's over to you, David.
Right, okay. Hopefully everybody in the pack has received some notes about the various planning applications that are on our agenda tonight. You may also have spotted that, having produced the memorandum about the planning applications, another one promptly came in. So there's a supplemental report to do with that one. The first of the applications is in respect of Limehouse, 4 East Road, although technically 4 and 6 East Road. It's a listed building consent. In effect, an expansion on an existing one granted back on the 5th of December last year. And essentially what's happened is that part of that planning permission involved the retention of a rather unlovely, relatively modern garage. They've now decided that they're better off demolishing the whole thing to create a wider parking area and turning area. Other than that, the proposals are really to do with sort of tidying the area up and making it look even better. I certainly couldn't see any obvious concerns with it. And it's interesting because when the original application came before us, the one that led to the existing permissions, we'd said we had no objection subject to any contrary view of the conservation officer, and added, and any issues with parking being addressed appropriately. And it does rather look as if in addressing parking appropriately, they've come back with a fresh application to make the whole process easier. So my suggestion would be essentially to say no objection subject to any contrary view of the conservation officer. I can't really see any likelihood that he's going to object. Everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Next one's a single-storey rear extension at 31 Highfield Road. That of itself is another one that's kind of coming back. There was an earlier submission that was under 200305 FUL. And essentially what's happened here is that the applicant's been asked by ENC to address certain issues by removing, for example, a canopy, reducing the size of openings, lowering the apex of a lantern wall, putting in a small window into the utility to improve internal light, reducing the size of a large side window, a reduction in size of some bifold doors, and a relocation of an internal wall to enlarge the WC, which has the knock-on effect of decreasing the size of the utility. We didn't object when the original application came before us, and I can't see any obvious reason to object to this one either. Again, unless anybody's got any contrary view.
No.
See absolutely no sign of a contrary view. Good. The next one is a single-storey entrance porch, first floor extension and single-storey rear extension at Sudborough House, Wood Lane. This may be beginning to look like a trend. This is a follow-up from a previous application, 1802419 which we were going to look at on the 5th of March 2019, but the application was withdrawn just beforehand, so we didn't in fact look at it, although my recollection is that former Councillor Neville Oakes did show us a presentation. The trouble is I can't remember much about it other than the fact I remember it was made and he said, we'll see this again. I don't think I anticipated it was going to be over 12 months later, but in any event it's come back. The website, when I looked at it, the only comment, if you like, was a no comment and no issues from the Head of Transport, Highways and Infrastructure, on the basis that the proposal wouldn't generate any significant additional traffic, which seems logical. And frankly, this is a large property on a large plot situated at the entrance to Wood Lane off Stoke Door Road, and I couldn't see anything in that application to cause us to object, unless anybody's had a good look at it and has come to a different view.
No.
No?
No.
No.
This could be the easiest planning meeting I've ever done. The next one's an application about trees. This is at 9 Havelock Cottages in East Road. If we simply followed our normal guidance, we would not object to the various items of tree husbandry, subject to any contrary view of the E&C tree officer. We often get a bit exercised when people talk about removing trees, and in this one there's an application to remove a juniper, simply on the basis that it says proximity to wall. But those of you who have looked at my note or have looked at the application online will notice that there's absolutely no other information available. There's no report by James Rowlett. There's no plan that shows where the thing is relative to the wall. There's no photographs. There's no anything. So on the basis that it isn't supported, I would say object on the grounds that there's insufficient information provided to justify removal, and doubtless if the tree officer takes a different view, well, they'll get their permission to remove it. But I suggest that we object on that basis.
Yeah,
I agree.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, I agree.
And then, as I mentioned, we picked up a late one, but it is on the agenda. This is a listed building consent at 96 West Street for internal structural alterations. That might ring an alarm bell straight away when you talk about listed building consents and doing things internally. Again, those of you who've had a chance to see my report will see that essentially, bless you, what happened,
My apologies.
was yet again, there was a previous relevant permission, 2018, 1286 the full, 1289 the LBC. And it would look like they started work on the property pursuant to that, then discovered that things were looking a bit awry. They called in a structural engineer, SEA. They produced a report which has got various pictures in it and all sorts, showing very clearly that sadly some of the wooden part of these structures has been very badly affected by probably woodworm and general rot, and quite a lot of it will need removal or restoration. And so essentially the application has come back to enable those works to be done in a way that will strengthen the structure. The structural engineer warning that if they persisted without doing anything, a particular internal wall might actually collapse. looking at it, the works are, what are they? New timber lintels, floor joists, structural posts, and repair or replacement of rotten wall timbers to reinstate the structural stability. There's apparently a fairly important historic truss within the building, which is, I think, a grade 2 listed one, but I couldn't tell you how far back it goes. But they need to put some metal steel strapping around that, it seems. They've said that in doing the works, they'll incorporate appropriate traditional materials where required. Where practicable, they'll actually reuse materials from within the existing building. And in any event, it'll all be done in close matching materials and using appropriate construction techniques. Basically, existing patterns and styles will be recreated to ensure that the external appearance, but I think they mean the external appearance internally, if that's not a contradiction in terms, remains sympathetic and in keeping with the current architectural aesthetics. That comes from the design statement, his language, not mine. Probably Mark Ben's. Those proposed works, he goes on to say, will remove and reverse some 20th century alterations and additions, in addition to sorting out the faulty structural elements. Certainly there was nothing in there that suggested to me that we should be objecting. It seems as if the work is entirely necessary. I guess it would seem appropriate to say no objection subject to any contrary view of the conservation officer, but I understood from the paperwork that the conservation officer had actually been involved in this at an early stage to give some guidance to them. So it's unlikely in that event that they'll have produced something that he wouldn't be happy with. And I fully expect that he'll be happy with it. So that's my suggestion. No objections subject to any contrary view of the conservation officer.
I agree.
Yeah.
Everybody else?
Yeah, agree.
Well, I think we've got through 5 planning applications in pretty record time, but actually none of them were that complicated to deal with. So I think that completes that element of the agenda.
Congratulations, David.
Thank you, Peter.
And thank you, David. It was your comprehensive report made it a whole lot easier.
Well, it's designed to try and speed the process up when we're doing it in full council, and it seems to work.
Yeah. Very good. David, you want to lead us through the next one as well?
Yes. Well, this is a curious situation, is it not? In recent weeks, we have seen planning permission granted for 260 additional dwelling units in Oundle, 130 on the Cotterstock Road, St Peter's Road site, and another 130 on the St Christopher's Drive site, albeit that 65 of those are in this, what I'm going to call the care facility on site. But nevertheless, that's 260. That is, of course, the entire number that were going to be required under the core strategy to 2031. And here we are still in the period of time theoretically governed by RNOTP, which runs to 2021, which is next year. And we appear to have not only used up the numbers under RNOTP, but in a sense got so ahead of the game that arguably we've used up all the numbers going forward. That has the curious consequence, you might think, of rendering any idea of taking forward the local plan part 2 almost entirely redundant, because what's it going to say? We should build on certain sites we've already given planning permission for. But of course the matter's more complicated than that in some respects. We've got a situation where we are aware that the local plan part 2 as currently configured includes not only what we've been talking about, but further dwellings on the Stoke Doyle Road site off the cemetery. That in fact is broadly speaking in line with what would have been our own neighbourhood plan. But of course, our own neighbourhood plan championed 2 other sites, one off Herne Road, which we started with relatively modest numbers on, and as a result of the interventions of ENC, actually, in terms of our own neighbourhood plan, significantly increased the provision of housing available on that site. And then we've got another site north of Benefield Road that was in our proposed neighbourhood plan that failed at examination. But that was a site which could, on its own, have exceeded the entire requirement for land to 2031. And if I were a developer currently, I would be looking at that situation and thinking, the chances are that RNOTP will be looked at as being dead in the water, whether it should be or whether it shouldn't, because it's coming to the end of that period. And arguably it hasn't been reviewed during its currency. And if we get part 2 in, my site, and that will be what arguably the developers of the Herne Road and Benefield Road sites, and I won't name them, but we all know who we're talking about, are going to say to themselves, if that gets in and gets through, it might be a big if, then our sites are off the agenda to gone 2031 in all possibility or probability. So if I were them, I'd be seriously looking at bringing those applications forward now. If we were to see, for the sake of argument, the best part of 500 more houses applied for, on top of the 260 that I've just talked about, on top of everything else that has had permissions or has been developed as windfall sites, we are looking at the most enormous expansion in housing in Oundle. And I don't think the Oundle infrastructure would stand it. So I refreshed my memory about what RNOTP said. And of course, there is a policy in RNOTP, which broadly speaking says the infrastructure has to be in before or at the same time as any development. And yet it seems to me that ENC have entirely abandoned their own policy, because that's not what's happening. We've not got the new infrastructure that I think arguably we would say that we need, nor does it appear to be likely to be a requirement for the 2 sites going forward. I have to put it that way because, of course, they've got outline permission. We haven't seen yet what the full permission packages might be. But nevertheless, my fear is that we're going to get all of this development, none of the infrastructure, and probably extra development over and above. And so what I was wondering was whether it would be appropriate for the Town Council to go to ENC at this point at RNOTP as the current local development plan and say, how on earth have you got us into this situation? And what are you going to do about the fact that you've got us here? By posing a series of questions to them. And in the little paper that came out with the agenda, I think I did propose some questions to them. I think there's, you could add 1 or 2 more probably relatively easily. And I see this not as in competition with anything else that we're doing in terms of possible complaints to the Ombudsman or anything else, but I actually looking at it more from the point of view of bringing this situation forward, highlighting it to the MP and through that to Robert Jenrick as the Housing Minister and so on. Now, all of that was in a paper that I put together before I started reading the Sunday papers, which told me that the government was about to announce what I might term a planning free-for-all. It's my language, not theirs, which suggests that essentially, if you want to build, there's almost going to be a presumption in favour of it. Now, it seems, from what I've read of it, that means that local authorities are going to have
David, you've broken up.
land available in their area, and they have to categorise this land or land affected for them to be renewed. Renewed would be brownfield.
Until he comes back, it looks like he's frozen.
Stable. So
Can I say something while we're waiting for David?
It might be good for David to hear you. Hang on, he's gone off for a minute.
David, come back.
Oh, he's tried another room.
it's funny, if you go closer to the little box in the dining room, it tends to come back again. Just about finished what I was saying, but it did seem to me, even before this latest news, that there were grounds for sort of trying to challenge ENC, not so much in the thought that we certainly can't reverse what's happened, and we may struggle going forward, but it's better than doing nothing, and it highlights the problems, and it will highlight to the people of Oundle that we're trying to do something about those problems, and at least one concerned resident has joined us tonight. But I think that perhaps the announcements that have been made almost will enable us to focus our possible approach to ENC by saying, all right, look, we're aware that this is likely to be happening. This is where we're at. This is the shambles that you've now left us with due to the way that you dealt with RNOTP. And we want to be closely involved in looking at how we zone the land in the parish of Oundle, not only the land obviously within existing settlement boundaries, but perhaps far more importantly within the parish, but outside the current settlement boundaries, to try to ensure that we don't get a complete free-for-all. And that extends to trying to prevent coalescence with Blackthorn in particular, because I think that's the biggest risk, but in a sense, any of the surrounding parishes. Many of us will be well aware that a person who used to be the chief executive of Persimmon, so far as I'm aware, brought up large tracts of land around Oundle and the Glapthorne area. And with the way things are now moving, I start to worry that he might have had even more foresight than I credited him with, because the chances of perhaps getting to develop that land in my lifetime have become much more real than I thought they were going to be. So that was my thinking. That's why I wanted it to go on the agenda, and I'm just sort of interested to see whether other people share those views, and if so, are we going to try and take it forward to ENC and then develop from that towards the MP and towards perhaps the Minister. And I can see Peter's got his hand up, but I'll let you chair it.
Shall I speak or? Yeah.
Well, I can see Tony's nodding, and I seem to have the floor somewhat, so carry on.
No, that's all right, David. The first thing I will say is you're right, we should approach ENC. However, I know that John White has got a plan. He's got a plan for 800 houses between Cotterstock and Glapthorne. Philip Rose has already done a pre-app for his development in Highland Road. George is tentatively now looking at going forward with his plan on the Bennefield Road, because obviously he now runs the estate rather than Julian. And I put the figure at about 670 houses to start off with, but of course then there's the second phase from the Bennefields part, which actually would take it up to about 1,000 houses for Oundle. And then if we included the White thing, which could happen within, I don't know, 3 or 4 years, you're probably looking at 1,800 houses. We must contact the ENC, we must talk to ENC, but I also feel that we've got to bring in all the parishes to voice everybody together, because I think the only way we can actually deal with the ENC, because they are determined to put houses wherever they want. And unfortunately, the new head of the Northamptonshire Unitary Council Planning is George North, who wants things to happen over here for some reason, so he's quite happy to see this development over here, and we have a stumbling block there. So it is a matter of trying, not just Oundle, because Oundle on its own won't achieve anything. We've got to bring in all the parishes in the area to act as one rural council for this area, to commit and to make sure that we have a bigger voice and a bigger say in what's going to happen with the new unitary council. So yeah, I agree with you. ENC must come first because ENC is still there, but it's the shadow council that actually starting to make more and more decisions over ENC. ENC planners now have got all the authority, all the new committees that were there for planning, Phil Stearns, Jake's committee, are now being pushed to one side, and the authority to do all the planning now is gone almost entirely to the officers and not to any elected people. So we do have a serious problem going forward, and I don't know how everybody else feels, but I think Oundle on its own won't achieve anything. We've got to get this bigger council, because it's going to affect people like Warmington, it's going to affect Farnwell, it's going to affect Lower Benfield, Upper Benfield, Ordner. They're going to be able to build literally anywhere, providing it's not in the green space. And that's really, really worrying. And of course, you're right, dead right, David, we have no infrastructure. Our infrastructure now is at the limits, and it seems that the planners and the developers, to a great degree, don't care. They don't mind if Oundle gets blocked from 6 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock in the morning because there's too many cars trying to go through, and at 6 o'clock at night to 9 o'clock at night. That's going to be the situation very soon, very quickly, if we allow this.
Just keep going around the table then. Yep.
Sorry, Tony, I've been going on a bit.
Anybody else want to top this worth?
Just the point of I agree completely with both Peter and David, and we've got to do something. And I think the unfortunate thing about it, had we, with hindsight, as I've said all along, the neighbourhood plan was just a blueprint for all of these available sites. Publish it, let people see it, which is what ENC have done seemingly, and everyone's now said, oh, thank you for identifying all these wonderful places for us. And now, of course, that's been taken away, and people are going ahead on their own. They're creating their own development companies to create these sites because the profits are huge. And if we want to stop it at all, I mean, I think, in 30 years' time, there'll be one vast A14 corridor of housing, but that's way past our lifetimes. But I think we need to do something just to stand up and say, well, look, we recognise it, and we need to do it as a group. So I agree with Peter.
Anybody else?
I agree entirely as well. I suppose the question is, how do you go about creating an alliance like that?
Yeah, and Val?
Well, I was just going to say that basically all the work that anybody's done on any neighbourhood plan, or local plan for that matter, is down the drain. What was the point of it all?
Yeah. David, back into your chairmanship.
Well, I know that wearing, very briefly, another hat, there is another council that I am associated with who feels exactly that, because it produced its neighbourhood plan and thought that would guide development in the parish of Blackthorn. and the planners just came along and increased the size of Glapthorne dramatically by saying, oh, well, we'll build on that part of the St Peter's Road, Cotterstock Road site that's in Glapthorne, notwithstanding a neighbourhood plan that made no provision for it at all. So I think you'd probably get a friendly ear in Glapthorne, and I'm fairly well placed to make sure it goes on an agenda and so on. And I appreciate it's perhaps more difficult when we're having meetings virtually than if we simply convened a meeting and invited everybody to attend at Fletton Hall. But I think that there is a reason for doing as Peter says, letting other councils know of our concern and what we want to do about it, and asking them if they would like to join with us. And then let's see whether the surrounding parishes do. I think that it's very likely Glapthorne would. I think Cotterstock would be very anxious about the situation. And it doesn't take a genius to figure out that there are others as well. Indeed, if we only think about somebody else who came to talk to us with ambitious plans for putting housing around the marina site, some of which, stroke all of which, might well be in Barnwell Parish. Well, there's another local council that might very well want to be part of whatever we can put together. Since otherwise, I fear that Oundle will cease to be the kind of small historic market town it was, and will become very much like a very large commuter belt for Peterborough. And that's desperately sad. Peter.
I was just going to say, we have had some encouraging remarks from Lower Bennefield and Cotterstock, and I believe Tony's been talking to people in Ashton. So we are getting to have this sort of conversation. But what we need from our council is permission to actually now ask other people to join, and without ENC involved at the moment, because I think, you know, the problem we have sometimes is that the parish council meetings that we have at the moment tend to be just rubber stamping for ENC. What we mustn't do is have them involved in this, but we must, I think, and it's very difficult, obviously, in the time of lockdown. It would be better to have people sitting round talking face to face in a big room so that we can keep the distances for all the villages and parishes around here.
Yeah. So I think the best way forward is maybe we give David permission, you know, to spearhead things with the basis of the questions that he's asked of ENC here, and share that with the other parishes. So, you know, this planning issue being one topic, and then there's a bigger topic about us coming together with the parishes on more issues than this one. But just to keep this one rolling, because David's put so much effort into it, you know, I'm 100% behind what he's done here. And say, you know, is everybody happy here for David to continue?
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So David, if you're not happy, tough.
Well, I wouldn't have set this hair running if I wasn't prepared to do it. So
Thank you.
Of course I will. I will obviously need to liaise with the office as well in terms of contacts with some of the other councils. It's probably easier to go through them than me trying to find the right people and approach them directly.
Okay. Right.
So can we get this thing moving then, so that, you know, for instance, I've been talking to people, you've been talking to people, David would talk to people. Shall we just get it moving now and talk to as many people as we can, and then get a meeting as soon as we can?
I think so.
So I think it's important not to sort of, you know, let it sort of ride for 2 or 3 months. We've got to get something organised well before Christmas, so that we can actually get a movement going, so that ENC and the new unitary can see that we have a big power base in this area that wants to talk and wants to make sure that decisions are made on for us, not for them.
So let's champion it with this cause, with this particular letter, and we'll move on then to this, you know, bringing together this fellowship, if you like, of local councils.
So that's going to be sent round all the people now then?
Yeah,
The
so
letter.
this thing that David's got here is going to be sent around all the people. You know, it's specific.
All,
Now,
all,
once you've got,
all the
once
parishes
you've got,
in the area?
yes, yeah.
Right, okay.
Okay then.
Sorry to push you, it's just I think this is very urgent. It's not something we can wait and have another decision and another talk in September, October. It'll be too late by then. We've got to
just given David permission to get on with it.
Yeah, David, you've got to get on with it.
All right, I will. I'll make
right,
sure I
yeah.
keep everybody informed though.
Right.
Thank you for initiating that one, David.
As I shot out of the other room I was in, all my papers are in the other room. So I'm just going to disappear off screen for 1 minute to grab them because I know
All right,
I've got to probably talk again at some point.
Yeah, we'll do
I
the
can't
payments
remember
while
when.
you're away. Okay. All right, so the next agenda item then is the approval list of payments. Obviously, one big one in the middle of that list, the boardwalk. But yeah, anybody noticed anything else of concern in the list?
Nope.
I did ask when I went through it, have we got 2 photocopiers? Payments for photocopiers comes down twice in that list for some reason.
Rental and then printing costs.
Right, okay, so they're 2 different accounts.
No, it's the same thing, but one is for the cost of printing and the other one is for the rental of the machine.
Oh, okay.
I believe, yeah.
Yes. Okay then. So, any other questions on those payments? If not, I'll propose them. We've got a seconder. Yeah, Ian, and then all those in favour. Thank you. Right. Receive the report regarding Oundle War Memorial and decide the next steps. So, who was it met up there? I've forgotten who now. Ian, it was you and...
I was there and Lisa was there.
Lisa, did you get my apologies via Karen?
Yes, I did, yeah.
That situation persisted for an entire week, so sorry.
Never mind, we thought something must have come up.
It had, massively.
Okay, so it sounds like you had a good meeting anyway.
Yeah, it was all very
yes,
good.
Jerry.
I think I saw something on social media about lorry damage. Is that
Yes,
true? Yes.
I've noticed that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's been reported once by me. I believe Ian's done it as well, and I think somebody else has reported it as well.
It has, and it's still there. But it says it's going to be done within 13 days or something. I can't remember.
It's got worse. I think somebody's hit it again since I last took pictures and since we were last down there. But yeah, they're on it.
Yeah. So one of the residents was telling me about the problem with cyclists putting their bicycles on the parking area, so the cars have to park further out into the road, and therefore you're driving trucks and buses and so on onto that curbstone. You know,
Yes.
so it's bad behaviour on other people. Yeah, Val.
Well, it's not just that. It happens very frequently. I've watched it many times. The lorries are getting bigger and bigger. We've had restrictions about movements around Oundle, and it's not something that happens once in a blue moon. It's quite frequent, and it's not usually to do with bicycles.
Well, hopefully it will get better when we've got the North Bridge open, but we do need as a separate issue to look at this bigger issue of driving around Oundle.
Yep.
So back onto this subject then, it was a very good conversation there. So we've got short-term and longer-term views on what we should be doing.
Yeah, I think Lisa can correct me if I'm wrong, but we sort of talked about the difference between the memorial itself, which is the fenced-off area, and then the sort of 2 steps and roundabout around it, which are slightly different. So adding some extra words, and there are 2 versions in the report about it being a listed monument, and then trying to put some notices out to the places where people might have takeaways from, just asking them to be respectful of the monument itself.
Yes.
And then the planters, and then the long-term aim, which sounded really exciting, was this sort of idea of the teardrop around the area behind it, which will solve a number of problems. But you know, that sounds like it might be a much bigger plan. I suppose the question is, do we start making noises to the right people now, or do we wait till Northampton starts? Or
We start now, to my mind.
Start
Peter,
now.
you want to say something?
The one thing I'd say about the bike riders is that they never use the bike racks near Tesco's.
No, we've had this
They park
conversation
on the
that they
road,
want.
but they
Yep.
don't use those there, because I mean, surely that'd be much better than having them park on the road.
But they, you know, they've said in the past they need visibility of these bikes when they're having their coffees and so on. So the
Well, if
bike
you change
racks
them
need
up,
to
there
be
wouldn't be
where
a
the
problem,
cafes
would there?
are.
Well, I mean, Beans and Tesco's are not exactly out of sight from each other.
They
No,
are
but
if you've got a £4,000 bike.
that's
Yeah.
the problem.
So we're not looking at the long-term problem. Val,
I'm absolutely opposed to the idea of the teardrop as you're describing, because I think that's another thin end of the wedge situation, and before we know it, there'll be bike racks on it. And I think it's too dangerous a place for encouraging people to sit about having picnics effectively. Terrible.
okay, I like the idea of calming, you know, and
Got to be discussed very carefully. And I
Yes,
think
okay.
people in the town should be asked for their opinion, frankly.
okay, Clive.
Well, there's two things come to my mind. I mean, I think we've got a dilemma of wanting to keep the town lively and vibrant and bringing people in and buying in the town. Cycling in this town is quite big now. I mean, it's something we should be looking at, you know, encouraging, but within some sort of scope, because it is a valuable thing to this town and will continue to be so. And I think the other thing, my other comment on, apart from sort of keeping that and using that, is the onus once again should go back to Beans. We should go back to the coffee shops and say, look, hang on, this is your town as well as it is ours. You have some responsibility here. Can you ask people to comply with what the town would like them to do, rather than come in, trash the place, and then leave again? You know, if you want to buy coffee here, be part of it.
All right, Ian.
Just commenting on Val's teardrop thing, I think nothing would go ahead without Highways engagement and approval. And, you know, if you look at the idea of shared spaces, shared roadway, it's incredibly popular now. If you walk up Exhibition Road in you know, near the Imperial College, you know, that's been calmed just by the fact that they've now got seats much jutting out into the road in little bollarded areas, and all the big limousines are much slower. So potentially making more of that area rather than using the big lorry turning circle and minibus parking area could potentially make it a much safer place, which would make the middle of town potentially safer. But obviously Highways would have to be approved for that.
So let's do the stuff that's in the report for now, which is the, you know, the changing of the signs, you know, for short and long term, and look at this bigger picture. You know, I certainly, you know, would be very much in favour of giving up some of our car parking spaces to, you know, proper bicycle parking, you know, over by Beans. You know, and I know Highways have been objecting to it in the past, but I think if we do consideration of that, you know, we could make the situation better. Okay. The only other thing I would say in observing the photographs that were as part of that report, if there was a way of getting that those keep left bollards off that island, I think they would make a significant improvement to it.
Yeah.
And I don't, you know, everybody knows they drive on the left of the thing, you know, so, they're taking those bollards off is something we would really need to lobby Highways for permission to do it, or, you know, get one of those truck drivers that keeps going over the curb to do it for us. Right. Are we happy that we move forward then on that one with the recommendations in the short report that's been prepared?
Yeah.
So that's good. And then we'll look for longer terms at, you know, what we do for that whole part of town. Because, you know, I'm sure, like all of you, that we can do a lot more with that area. Okay. Right. And then the very worrying one, the EPC report for the Jones Strong Centre. Just to open this one, when I read it, I thought this was absolutely ludicrous, for what was a scout hut, to be putting all of these requirements on it. I then, in my own mind, referenced churches and how could a church ever comply with this? So in doing the research on that, I found that churches are exempt from this requirement. So possibly one of the ways round for this one is to ask the Methodists if they would move in. But the sort of things that we're going through this report, in terms of the cost and the payback on it would be ludicrous. Yeah, but anyway, that was me just having something to get going. Val.
When we as it were, refurbished the Jones Strong Centre from what it was, which was a delousing station, one of the things that we considered very carefully was a lot of the aspects in that report. And the reason we have the heaters, for instance, in the roof is because they like to play, obviously, the young people, and there's 200 or 300 a week who go through that building, games which involve them hurtling backwards and forwards. And we tried to make it as safe as we could by not having any kind of structures on the sidewalls, as an example. It was very, very carefully planned to be the way it is.
Yeah, okay. We've got Peter and then Ian.
It's just that I was going to say something flippant, but I'm not going to bother. I think obviously we've got to do it, so I can't really see why we have a lot of discussion about it. It's got to be done, otherwise it won't be compliant.
Yeah, okay, I'll talk again on that in a moment. Ian and then Jerry.
Can I just ask a couple of technical questions? Because I've seen a lot of these EPC reports and there's all the recommendations, but there's no obligation to follow through with them all, is there? We simply need to get it up to an E. Is that right, Lisa?
Yeah, but that involves, I don't know whether you saw the stuff he sent today, because I spoke to him and said, could you clarify what we need to do? And he said it's basically, it's the heating. It is the main hall that's the issue. He said it's just the way you're heating it obviously isn't energy efficient. So I think he said, what were his words? He said the construction is of the heavy block walls, so they're not particularly well insulated. He said about timber cladding, or there's other ways that you can insulate them. He said your infrared and your electric fans are very inefficient, so you really need to look at a different source of heating. And the lighting. Heating and lighting are your main things. And he said it's just basically because it's a big, high ceiling, and he said it's just very, very inefficient the way that you're using lighting and heating.
Second question, what's the timescale for the new lease or the re-lease?
Well, we thought it was there. Emma's been working on it, and we thought it was there, and then this all came up, and obviously we cannot issue a new lease until we've got the EPC down to an acceptable level.
But that's what I'm saying. When does that new lease need to be issued? When does the old lease run out?
I can't remember. Sorry.
Okay, because presumably
just as a technical point, Ian.
Yep.
The existing lease will continue unless and until it's replaced by a new lease.
Right.
So on one level, there's no immediate urgency because the status quo could be maintained.
Yep.
I mean, there are all sorts of ways of looking at this laterally as well, if we worry about the expenditure on it, because the situation comes about because we want to grant them a new lease. Well, one option is to simply leave them there indefinitely under the old one, in which case, on the face of it, I don't think we would have an issue. If we still did have an issue, another way around it would be to not lease the premises to them in the way that we currently do, but to hire it out to them. Because I don't think there'd be any obligation upon us as a council who simply hired it out to put the heating into any particular type of energy efficiency or anything else. but those are fairly radical, things to do. But actually, there's quite a few options.
Okay. So Jerry was next on the. So do Jerry, and then we'll come back.
Can I just finish one last question? No, okay.
Yeah, do Jerry, and then we'll come back for another question, Ian. Yeah.
Okay.
I was going to ask one thing, which was how many hours a week is it used? I mean, is it? I don't. Who uses it apart from the scouts, and how often is it used?
Beavers, you name it.
Yeah, I know, but how many hours a week? I'm just curious, how many hours a week is it used?
I should imagine it.
I don't know when they meet.
Well, every evening.
It's every evening, is it?
So a couple of hours every evening, so 10 hours a week.
Probably
10 hours a week, something like that.
Much more than 10 hours a week, I would think. Yeah.
Well, Lisa, can you answer that question?
Find out.
Yeah, find out how long it's used for. Because that's obviously, in terms of any investment, that's a critical number, because you're only going to heat it when there's people in there. So you need to have something to heat it when the scouts are there. So that's the first thing. The second thing I was going to ask was, is there any other accommodation that we've got that we could, rather than continue? It kind of relates to the number of hours. Do we have to provide the Joan Strong Centre, or is there another facility that could provide accommodation for it for the number of hours required?
Okay.
And the final point was, I'm an engineer. I work in energy. I think Tony's got similar skills. So there are people in the council who have got some knowledge in this area. I think Ian as well. So if you're interested in getting some input from qualified engineering people who know how to work these things out, then please ask us.
And back to you, Ian.
I was just going to ask a question about timing again on the floor and the kitchen choices. How that was linked to the heating and the EPC.
Well, we found a problem with some damp, which John and I had another look at today. We've definitely found the source of it. But obviously the scouts had asked if they could replace the kitchen some time ago, which we'd said yes, we were in the process of sorting the lease, so Emma saw no reason why they shouldn't. So they stripped it all out, but subsequently found very damp walls at the back, which is coming in from some poor drainage outside. And I just happened, she spoke to me the other day and just said, we've ordered the kitchen, we want to get the flooring ordered. But of course, as soon as it coincided with the time the EPC came in. So we were like, well, hang on a minute, we don't want to give them the go ahead and they start putting stuff in if we've essentially got to pull bits off the wall and dig up the floor and sort the drainage problem out. So it was just it was timing really, which it's a good thing that it's happened, because it would have been heartbreaking if they'd got to the point of fitting all of that and then we'd had the EPC done. So it's happened at the right time really, but it's just advising them where we can go with this. But if David's option is an option that the council want to follow, in that we don't have to jump through these hoops if we don't issue them with a new lease and we just carry on as is, then as long as we get the drainage problem sorted out fairly quickly, there's no reason they can't carry on and do what they were intending to do.
That sounds about the sensible route. The other one, just along the lines that Jerry was talking about before, it would be very interesting to find out what their electricity bill is over a 12-month period. Because whatever happens here can only be a reduction of whatever that bill is. And if that bill is, for example, £2,000 a year, you're the best in the world, you're only going to save half that number.
Yeah.
Okay, I think Lisa's got a good enough line from us, particularly from what David put in there about it not being essential to renew this lease at this point in time. I think also in terms of the kitchen, if we've got a good enough steer from the EPC report that even if we have to go down that route, to get us up to an E won't need changing anything in the kitchen. It's lighting and heating elsewhere, therefore they can get on with the kitchen, once we've got the walls in a sound condition.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Anybody else want anything on this one? No. Okay, then Lisa, it's over to you for that then. Thank you.
Okay.
Right. To consider the recommencement of classes in Fletton House and QVH. So the first one here is to receive an update of health and safety procedures from the Slimming World. So we weren't happy previously. Are we better now?
Bit dark.
Okay, right, sorry.
To
So I see the pictures of what they're proposing. Jerry?
I was just going to say, I was hoping for some comment from Lisa, really. I mean, I think it's, to a large extent, whether our staff are comfortable with what's going on rather than us, because we're not going to be there. You're going to be in there with them.
No, we set the room out, as you can see in the pictures that I sent you. And to be fair, weddings have already recommenced in Fletton House in the smaller council chambers. And to be fair, I think it's a better setup in the Glapthorne room anyway. There's much more space. Apparently the guideline is the chairs can be 1 metre apart if it's an airy room where there's plenty of windows, which Glapthorne is clearly because there's windows on all sides. And she's definitely put things into place. Emma and I and Rebecca were all happy with her one-way system. The fact that she's told people that are coming they can only come by appointment, so she will have a very clear idea of who's coming for each group. Anybody that just turns up will be turned away. She doesn't want use of the toilet facilities apart from staff, so she's informing all the people that come, because it's only a 40 to 45 minute class. And then she's got a 15-minute turnaround time where they're going to wipe everything down and make sure it's all sanitised for the next group to come. So we were quite happy with the arrangements that she's made.
Lisa. So now it's Jerry and then Ian. And
have we discussed it with Volunteer Action? Are they happy as well?
Yes, yeah, we've told Liz that we're gradually going to be introducing people in. To be fair, they will only be, Volunteer Action will have all gone by the time. About the only group that will actually at some point be back in the building with Slimming World will be us when we start having council meetings again. So, yeah.
Ian?
My reading of the guidelines is that the 1 metre thing is only in place with what they call risk mitigation, and I think that's more than just a couple of windows being open nearby. And to my mind, at least, it still looks too packed. And they're looking at 30 people in the room. Is that right?
Maximum 30. That's including the leaders of the group.
Okay, and that still looks too cramped compared to a lot of pubs that are having to put tables 2-3 meters apart, etc. My reading is that they're being a bit flippant when we're in the middle of 2 of the big hotspots, top 20 hotspots in the country still.
The only thing with that though, Ian, is how can we allow the weddings to continue in a smaller room and turn the others away? It's quite a difficult thing really, because we showed her how the wedding room was set out, and in everybody else's mind how it's set out in the Glapthorne room is much more spaced apart. So it's quite a tricky situation when they know that weddings have already been allowed. I mean, admittedly the first wedding was on Saturday and I think there was only 8 in attendance, but that's
so
fine.
How many allowed in the wedding place?
30 including the registrars, yeah.
But they haven't put forward
Sorry, my apologies.
They haven't put forward a risk assessment for the Oundle room that we've seen, have they? The last one was for Corby and Rushton or Wellingborough or something.
No, I sent a risk assessment from the registrars to Emma. That was one of the first things she requested when they kept emailing to say, can we book a wedding? So,
okay, well, I haven't seen one, never mind. But that's just my view. I would say their risk assessment last time was poor, and I'd say this without seeing sight of another one because it was so generic. I wouldn't be in favour personally, but that's just me.
Are you talking about the weddings? The weddings?
You're talking about the Slimming World.
World. Yeah.
Talking which one? Sorry.
The Slimming World.
Right. Okay.
Slimming.
Okay.
Clive?
Yeah, just one point. I mean, I think, you know, I've always said it. I mean, I think people are going to vote or with their feet about this. If we've followed the guidelines that are set out and it fulfills those guidelines and we've done it, if Slimmers World want to do it, which is a business, they come in and the people go there and say, hang on, whoa, this isn't for me. They'll vote with their feet and they won't turn up. And she's got to then get her clientele back again to make it work. So in some ways, if she hasn't done it properly, if she doesn't clean down in between each group effectively, although it affects the people next day, which is one of those things we've got to do, make sure that she does clean down. But I mean, I think people turn up and look at it and think, hang on, this is too crowded for me. I'm not going to go. She's going to have to remedy or sort of something out to get them back again, because she's running a business. And people will, you know, to my mind, she's got to make it work for herself. So if people turn up, I wouldn't go. I agree with Ian. I wouldn't turn up there. If I turned up there to lose some weight and saw it, I'd go, no, I'd rather stay at home and not eat. You know, but so we've got to leave it, in some ways, we've got to leave it back to people's, you know, good sense, really, I suppose.
Okay, anybody else on this one? Jerry?
If I've understood the document you sent through correctly, they're going to do 45-minute, 50-minute clean down sessions per evening. So it's actually not 30 people; it's 120 people coming through, assuming they get full.
Assuming she gets full capacity, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I hope it goes without saying that I'm assuming they'll have contact details for all of those 120 people, so that if they do need to do any tracing, they'll know how to get in touch with them.
Apparently, she said so. Yes, yeah, they've got all the full details.
Out of interest, how are they going to disinfect our cloth-covered chairs?
That's a really important thing.
Ian?
I think, is Peter waiting or?
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, Peter. Sorry, Peter, you're in black and white on my screen. Peter, thank you.
It's the lights. I haven't switched the lights on. I think,
John?
to be honest, I would say Ian's right. I don't think we should allow this, and I'll tell you why. Most people that are overweight, and there are some very overweight people go to this slimming world, are the most vulnerable. And to put them in a room where they're going to have that sort of close proximity to each other, I don't think is right. I think it's wrong, and we shouldn't allow it at the moment.
We shouldn't be governing that. People should be governing that. We can't. If we followed the guidelines, then we have no more say. If an obese person wants to do something and they're there, it's their decision to turn up.
Yep, okay, Ian?
Just on that point about the guidelines, I think the lack of clarity is, I mean, I've just had a quick look online and it says 2 meters inside unless there's risk mitigation in place, which is, you know, masks, visors, etc., etc. And I know it's different in a pub, but there are limits supposedly on who you can go to a pub with. So it seems that 30 people on a rota of 4 meetings, one after the other in that comparatively small space is not great. Just talking about disinfecting, in that 15 minutes, they also have to clean down the stairs and the handwell, the staircase, weren't they? The banister, and all the doors in and out. So unless they've got a lot of staff ready to go with the magic liquids, it just seems.
And the lift, they've got to do the lift as well.
You know, it seems if they said we've got all that, we've got 3 people ready to go, we've got masks and visors and all that, then yeah, sure, let them. As Clive said, let people vote with their feet. But, you know, if this was the beginning of a spike, if you look at the headlines in 6 weeks' time, Oundle coronavirus spike starts at Slimming World in Flatton House, people would presumably ask, what did we do? The website says, is your business COVID secure? In which case you can do this. I don't know.
I know, Clive, you want to speak, but go on very quickly.
Just very quickly, I mean, that's exactly right. We've got to make sure that the regulations are done, and it's the cleaning down that's going to be the problem. I mean, and I don't believe she'll do it.
No.
personally.
So let's just move this to a vote then. Sorry, David, go on. You.
Well, I've listened to what everybody's saying, but it seems to me that there is a sort of a halfway house potentially, but it'll be up to Slimming World to decide if they're prepared to do it. But we could turn around and say the maximum number you can have in the room is X, and we could specify a lower number. And we could also turn around and say, and you can't have 4 sessions, you have to have 3 sessions, because we want a longer cleaning period between the sessions. And I suspect that if we did moderate the numbers slightly and we increased the amount of cleaning time and reduced the amount of throughput, I'd then be happy enough to let it go forward. I'm no expert on exactly what the numbers and timescales should be, but I don't think it's beyond the wit of man to come up with something. Whether she would then think it's viable would be a matter for her commercial judgment. But I would suggest that that might be a way around it. I am slightly worried about the idea of turning down one user and yet seemingly allowing another user in not dissimilar or even worse circumstances to continue. That seems very illogical to me.
Yeah, we do need one standard. Okay, so we've got on the table at the moment the one about Slimmers World, so we can take that one in isolation for a moment, come back to the wedding one. But just in terms of those in favour of allowing Slimming World to return, you got anybody in favour? No. So we're not going to take the other vote. We know where it's going. So we really need to say that the proposal they've got on the table isn't acceptable. We're concerned about cleaning down, and we're concerned about numbers of people in the room. Jerry.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think throw it back to them, say we're not happy about 4 sessions, we're not happy about 30 people in the room, we're not happy about the cleaning, and see what they come back with.
Yeah. Although it's not on the agenda, the situation with weddings also seems to have got our concern as well here. I don't understand. What is the weddings one? Explain it to me.
Well, just the wedding ceremonies have always taken place in the council chambers, and they did what was required. They sent a risk assessment through. I have to say I didn't actually look at it. I just forwarded it straight to Emma. But yeah, based on their risk assessments, which I think they've done obviously with all the buildings, council buildings that they use for ceremonies. And Emma set up the room for the first one that was on Saturday for a capacity of 30 people. Yeah, and the first wedding went ahead, but I believe, I'm sure it was less than 10 people that were in attendance at the one on Saturday. We've got one on the 15th of August, and apparently that is full capacity. That is 30, including the registrars.
And Jerry?
I think the guidance has been changed now, though, hasn't it? I don't think you can have 30 people in a wedding now. That's changed.
Well, when did that change?
In the last week or so.
Oh, okay. So I think Emma set the room up a week or so ago.
Right. And Peter?
I think Jerry's right, actually. If I remember right, there was something saying that you can now only have a maximum of 10.
I know it started as 10, didn't it?
It's gone back down again, you see.
Okay, I need to look into that then, because back down to 10.
Okay. I'm sorry, Lisa, it puts a lot on you and Emma, but you do need to make sure that we're compliant, and if we're in doubt, we just got to say no.
But I think to some extent it's incumbent on the registrars as well. I mean, the registrars presumably know better than we do. So they should be doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ian?
I remember reading that last risk assessment, and it mentioned Corby and Wellingborough, or Corby and Rushton, or 2 places. It didn't mention us in particular, but I know I seem to recall we didn't discuss it or vote on it. And I've just looked again at the government website, and it talks about 30. It talks about lower numbers. It talks about face coverings after the 8th of August. It seems confusing. So if they're doing it, and I suppose they're meeting the standards they think they need to, but it does sound that 30 is a bit big, and I'm sure it was headlined a few days ago that they were reducing numbers, but I can't find it.
All right, Lisa, over to you with that one then. Just make sure that we're keeping everybody safe. That's what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now it's on to yoga in the QVH.
Yes, the yoga lady's asked if she can come back twice a week, just one session, I think a Tuesday evening and a Friday morning. She's only got 6 people that she wants to bring back, so herself and 6 people in the Queen Victoria. Obviously, Emma and I have got to put in place the health and safety bits and for the communal areas that we will be looking after. So we were going to meet with her, I think, on the 11th next week to discuss her health and safety plans, and then obviously talk to her about ours. So we wanted it on the agenda just to say that if Emma and I feel that she's done everything she needs to do and we have, would you be acceptable to say okay that she can come back on that basis?
All right, Peter.
Is it in the big hall in the QVH, Lisa?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the big hall.
Yeah.
So 6 in the big hall. I don't think that'd be a problem. Do you?
Well, they tend to lie down. They tend to go end to end, don't they, to take up more space. but just on a 2 meter distancing, yeah. So look,
they would get the 2 meters, even if they're laid down.
Yeah.
If we mark it out with them laid down, as long as there's 2 meters all the way around them.
Yeah, but if she's only talking about 6 and it only ever will be 6, I think we can be a lot more comfortable with it. But if 6 is the beginning of we're moving up to 30 and 40, she must understand that 6 seems to work. Ian.
Just being boring about risk assessments again. I mean, if she can provide a really simple one that convinces you and Emma that everything's great, that's fantastic. It will be worth her checking, because I know there's a lot of stuff being written at the moment about people sweating. I don't know how sweaty and breathy you get when you're doing yoga, but most people are saying 3 meters for exercise rather than 2 meters because of the aerosol impact. And if she just, with 6 of them in there, I'm sure she can get that working. But from her own point of view, if she can write that down, then everything's covered.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Thanks. So on to the skate park.
Yes. So I met with RPM, which are the ones that have come out and done quite a few repairs over the years. So I met with them on Friday. They've submitted a quote today, which is £7,086, which is just to replace the boards on the actual one ramp. But they are not confident that the structure of the it's called a half pipe ramp, because they said there's been so many times when new rivets have been put in, until they lift the current boards, they will have to be really careful where they put the new rivets. Obviously, basically, I suppose there's more holes than there is anything. They did identify as well that one of the railings is quite wobbly and has been tightened many times over there. So it might be a case of new bolts, I don't know. But they both said that they weren't confident as to this being a long-term fix for the skate ramp. I've had to ask, even though it's taped off, I've had to ask when I walk the dog through there and check every evening. Lots of kids on there, and I had a chat with one of the lads, and he said it's by far the most popular of the apparatus that's on the park, probably hence the damage. So yeah, I don't know. And ballpark figures for replacing it completely, coming up to £40,000 excluding VAT. That's just one of the quotes that I've had so far.
Yeah. All right. Peter.
Well, if I had the choice between 7,500 and 40,000 to completely renew it, I'd go for the 40,000. Because I think if we don't do it, we're going to have another 7,000 or 8,000 next year and another 7,000 or 8,000 the year after. And we can't allow those children that skate park. If we don't do it, they'll just find somewhere else to do. Like, for instance, the Jones Strong Centre roof, which they use as a jumping board.
Yeah. Okay. Ian.
Agree with Peter entirely about the cost, but also there was talk a while ago about getting young people in town involved in redesigning things, and you know, if we did find the money to do it properly, the ability of putting a flagship thing in there, whether it's one of these concrete sort of in things that I see my boys watching on video, it could make it a really high quality environment that would then last a lot longer than 7,000 each year, 7,000 each year. But we'd have to get our skates on and try and get someone involved pretty soon, I would have thought.
Okay, Val.
When we built the skate park, and we had a group then of people, youngsters from the town, 2 years, every Monday night, as I recall, we decided against concrete because we went all over the country doing a survey about the best sort of skate ramps and things to have. And people said, don't do concrete because you can never change it. The cost of removing an unsatisfactory element is massive. Don't do concrete.
All right. Anybody else in the moment? Clive.
Just a quick one. I think, yeah, I agree completely with Ian and Peter. I think let's go for a better, more up to date, because they'll pull you know exactly what's going to happen. They'll take the boards off that one, find it's completely useless, and it will just be wrecked. And as Ian said, if we do this properly, we've once again got a flagship thing that people will want to come and see, want to come and use. And that, I mean, I don't know if you know about Eastbourne, but Eastbourne backed a skate park in the promenade of Eastbourne, and it's world famous now. They have people coming from California to use it. Not saying we should have those sort of aspirations, but it is an amazingly popular thing. And if we could make it better, let's go for it.
Oh, okay. Peter.
Yeah, one more thing. I mean, obviously, I think you're right. We should go. Well, I know because that's what I've already said. But I understood, and I'm not sure if I'm right about this. But didn't we have a meeting in the past where we said we could put a new skateboard in using some 106 money?
Yeah, we did speak about that. In fact, when I was talking to Emma about this, we were talking about grants. I'm pretty sure there'll be grants available for it. Yeah, we'll have to find a way of funding it. I'm sure we'd be able to. I mean, again, Emma said it depends what happens with Fletton Field, but that money that's earmarked for that, if that doesn't come to fruition, then maybe it's something that we could use that money for. But obviously, it's going to be, I mean, that figure I gave you at nearly 40,000 installed, nearly 40,000 installed, that's just for that half pipe ramp. It's not for the whole skate park.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
So with the people that came and looked at it, they looked at the other ramps, and John had agreed as well. There's been various repairs done to those, and they're not in bad condition. They will last a bit longer, and they're still usable, hence why we didn't close the whole park. But it's the half pipe, which is the most popular one, which we've had to close because there is just too much damage to it.
All right, David?
I mean,
well, funnily enough, that was more or less the area I was going down, because I had this feeling that we had potentially got money available for it. And I think that what we need to do is just look further into the funding situation and put this one back on an agenda. Maybe if we get back to committees, get it out to properties. If not, bring it back to full council, when we can actually see, can we afford it, either with grant funding or through a 106 or whatever it might be. Because I agree. I think if we're going to do the job, I think you get to a point where you can't just exist on patch and mend forever. And I think that's the risk. We'll just be chucking good money after bad after a while. And it might be, we'd be starting doing that now.
Just quickly, the ROSPA report is due in September, and Emma, before she went on leave, has asked them to bring it forward. They've not contacted me yet, so I will chase them tomorrow. But their report on it last year wasn't particularly bad. It wasn't particularly significant. It just said about securing some boards. So it will be interesting to see what their recommendations are. And in fact, 2 of the companies that I contacted for quotes have said, well, can you let us know the results of your ROSPA report before we go ahead and give you our recommendations? So I'll chase that tomorrow. We'll bring it forward from September and see what they recommend. So that'll be quite interesting to get their feedback on that as well.
Ian?
In the meantime, obviously it's all taped off and it's all closed at the moment. Could Rebecca come up with a clever sign or a clever advert or a clever something, just asking that any of the users of the skate park at the moment, if they've got any ideas about how even a new half pipe could be improved, to get in touch, just so that if there's 2 or 3 sort of natural leaders in that group that we can get in contact with, we can use them to talk with about how things go once we know a bit more.
So like a request for consultation then from the kids for their ideas.
In a trendy way.
I know Ian's sons are pretty involved in that sort of thing. So, you know, it's great if you can get some local kick-off again with people that are really interested in it as a professional sport and to get it right. Because I'm sure the half pipe could be extended or changed, because it's changed since the sport has changed since that was built. So there are people out there that would want to improve it and change its shape, and they're very knowledgeable people. As I say, Ian's sons are there right on it. So there are people around.
They're very much on the edge of being on it.
It's an Olympic sport now.
Yeah.
So the only question in my mind here is whether or not we pay the 7,000 to get it up and running, because we know that we want to do a bigger job later on and we need time to consider that.
I was just going to say that actually, because I think the engagement with the young ones will be brilliant, because it will make them realise we're doing something. But I had an email from a young lad that's a regular user. In fact, he was the one that first said about he was worried about the damage. And he emailed me again on Monday and said, oh, it's been 3 weeks, what's happening? Nothing's happened yet. And I politely explained to him that, well, first of all, it had only been 2 weeks, but that these things actually do take time, and that, you know, we have to obtain quotes and all the rest of it. So I just wondered whether it is maybe worth repairing it in the meantime so that they can use it, because this is going to take quite a long time. This is going to be a long process. It's similar to the boardwalk, really. And I think the kids are going to get cheesed off with not having it to use. Well, they're still using it. They're still just using it.
My fear is that we would be rushing the next decision if we don't do something temporary now. Ian?
You can tell me to go away. Do you want to send him my email address? Because I've got 3 weeks on and off for the next 3 weeks with not a lot to do. I'd be happy to meet him down there and have a chat about what we might be able to do or what he might like us to do, just so at least he feels we're doing something.
Yeah.
Send him my council email address, and if he gets in touch, we can have a chat. Is that all right?
Yeah. I think that's a good idea if everyone's happy.
Just on this idea of, do we want to pay the £7,000 now to keep it in operation whilst we're having the bigger decision?
I think we've got to, because they're going to use it anyway. If we just rip the tape off and use it, so we've got to make it safe. So within the ROSPA guidelines that are going to come through, or the report from ROSPA, it goes together. But we've got to make it safe, because they're going to use it anyway. And if someone breaks their neck because of damage that we didn't repair, then whoa, usual kickoff.
Yeah, I would like to do that. Does anybody object to doing that? Do you want to talk, Peter, or object?
I just want to sort of say, earlier we talked, or Lisa talked about, or I can't remember if it was Lisa or one of the other councillors, did talk about the fact that, we could repair it, but when they take the boards off, it's a bigger repair, it could cost us a lot more money. So are we saying it's only going to cost us 7,000, or are we going to say, well, if you find something else that's wrong, and we've then all of a sudden got to pay a lot more money out for a temporary repair, instead of getting on with buying a new one. I mean, to me, if we're going to make this decision, why don't we just buy a new one and get it in place and take that one away straight away?
Because we want to look at a new design.
Yeah, I'm not
It's got to be
saying
inspected. Surely it's got to be inspected first. It has to be inspected before you do a repair. Can't just.
Well, I don't know, Ian.
Yeah.
Sorry, Clive. I don't
Lisa,
know what I'm saying.
Well, Lisa, you know a bit. We don't.
Well, I was just going to suggest that get the ROSPA report sorted, and then if I speak to RPM and say to them, would they remove the boards first, and before they go ahead and replace them, confirm that they think it will withstand at least a year.
Yeah.
I mean, if they don't think it's going to be, you know, sort of fit for purpose for a year, then it is pointless. But by establishing that, we can then keep the boards off and make sure we get some fencing around it so it's completely unusable.
Yeah,
That would be the only.
Is everybody happy with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And in that statement, it's if they can repair it, then they're going to spend the 7,000, and we're going to take a bit more time, to get the park the way the bigger park, and not just that one half pike part of it.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Thank you. Right, to receive an update from the Christmas market. The last one's easy compared to this one. Lisa.
Yeah, so I hopefully you read through the input that Emma got from the quarterly town clerks meeting. Everybody has the same worries and the same issues. Some people are intent on continuing with their Christmas market. Some of them have got easier circumstances in that they have it in a field and they can monitor who comes in and who comes out. They can have one entrance, one exit. The biggest thing that Emma and I have a problem with is what they said is HSC are going to come down hard on anybody that's not obviously managing it correctly. And one of the things they were very specific about is that we have to control the numbers of people attending the event, i.e. they need to be counted coming into the event and leaving the event.
Yeah.
Which I feel is impossible.
Yeah. Jerry?
I agree. I mean, I think, it's disappointing, it's sad, but I mean, if you think about what our Christmas market is normally like, it's everyone's packed in, aren't they? And you can't control the number of people going there.
Okay.
I think at the moment it's just not tenable.
Val?
Yeah, the whole point about the Christmas market is the packed in feeling. And if you've got to limit the numbers because you've got to have spaces and limits on numbers, it's not going to be the same event anyway.
No.
Jerry?
Yeah, we can still do like the Christmas tree, and we can still have carols, and we can still do stuff for local people, but we don't have to have 50 stalls and people coming in from all over the county.
Okay. Well, this looks fairly straightforward. Peter?
I agree with Jerry. We can still have the carols. Obviously, the Christmas tree can go up. We can have the lights, but we do it on a low-key basis so as not to have lots and lots of people coming into the town. And then we do it for the people of Oundle.
Yep. Okay. I think that it was a lot easier than I thought it was going to be. Val, go on.
Well, I'm just saying it was easy.
So is that unanimous? Is that, yeah?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it's a no-brainer, so yes.
Yeah. But very sad, but
It's sad, yeah.
we get closer to the event, we can monitor the situation and might be able to do something. And it might be something down at Barnwell Park, joining up with one of the other villages. But somebody who's got a better environment where you can be more spaced out.
Oh, it's just impossible to police. There are too many cut-throughs. There are too many ways of escaping the town, if you like to think of it that way, for it to even content us thinking about numbers and checking. It's just impossible.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right. Well, this is not a nomination now for the Christmas tree, is it? The St. Peter's Drive, St. Peter's Road tree. Yeah. So
Yeah, the bats.
Bats, bells.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm sort of followed the story along. Maybe Ian, I know you've got a vested interest, but you may be best person as well to inform the rest of us.
Yeah, I think you can see on. I'm just going to try and share my screen to see if.
Ooh.
Do I have rights to do that? Do you think, Lisa?
I don't know.
No, I don't. Never mind. That hasn't worked. There's a tree
If you've
outside
got
my
a
window.
mirror, you can share it.
No, it's on my computer. That's the problem. There's a tree just out there, and the question's been raised by a couple of local
That
neighbours.
tree.
There, that tree there. That's from.
Well done,
like
Lisa.
taken on my property. Did I take that photo? The question's been raised. There's an area up the side of the field that they're going to build 130 whatever houses on, which is a ditch, and that ditch is generally being considered to be the boundary between the field and everything else. And a couple of neighbours have done some digging. There's been some conversation, and this tree is very clearly on the other side of the ditch. So the question is raised: does the planning permission apply to the tree? And more digging is being done, and Highways have basically said they own the tarmac, but the land under the tarmac is owned by whoever owned it beforehand. And I don't know if that's legally correct or not, but it would appear that this land was sold to Oundle Urban Council back in the 60s, along with the rugby club pitch. And so technically, potentially, we own the road outside my house or the land under it. And therefore, the little mound of earth at the end of the road, and maybe the tree, might be the property of the town council, which would clearly have an impact on the plans for a through road through to Cotterstock Drive. I've measured the whole thing out with a piece of wood and a very belligerent 15-year-old and a tape measure. I think it's nip and tuck as to where the boundaries actually tie up, but I'm sure with lasers you could do a better job. I don't know if there's any remit to it. There are definitely bats living in the tree as well, but I think in planning terms there can be mitigation put in place to that. I don't know if it's a battle worth fighting, but it's an interesting quirk that might slow things down if we had a very
brilliant, wouldn't it? Be absolutely brilliant if we could stymie them at the last point.
The little nature reserve, 3 foot deep.
Okay.
So there we are.
David, can you give us a professional view on this?
I can try. It is an interesting point as to exactly where that boundary is. I always thought it was pretty blurred when I was living on St. Peter's Road, because at the back of my property was a large hawthorn hedge, but behind that, in other words, on the field side of that hedge, there were properties up and down St. Peter's Road that cultivated the land immediately behind it or used it in various ways. And I think everybody regarded their hedges as being completely on their land and nothing to do with the field. And if you kind of project that down, it gets quite interesting as to where the tree is. And then if the tree just were on land belonging to the town council, and there seems to be a possible argument for saying it is, well, two things occur to me. One is we could approach the tree officer, and although I'm not sure that it's the world's greatest specimen, there's no harm in asking whether or not a tree preservation order could be put on a tree on land that we assert is ours. So that might be an issue. Now, okay, even if we got a TPO, it doesn't mean the developers couldn't potentially get permission to remove it, but it might certainly create a few issues. But of course, if any of that land that gives access to that field is in the ownership of the town council, and I certainly think there's a possible argument for asserting that it is, we could potentially notify the owners of the field that they do not have the council's permission to use any part of our land to gain access to that development site.
Yes.
And I suspect that if they can't get access at both ends, they may struggle to put 130 houses on there with only one entrance in and out up onto the Cotterstock Road. So it's going to be worth exploring at least We may end up spending some money on some professional costs. I haven't had as much time to research it as I hoped I was going to have. I told Ian I'd look into it. I don't do very much yet, but I think that there are things in there that we could and almost certainly should pursue. But I can see Ian's got his hand up again, so I'll defer.
On Ian.
No, it's just simply to add, the previous tree officer's been out to look at it a few months ago, and he said he couldn't put a TPO on it because it was part of some land that was having planning going through on it.
But
Clearly,
not if it's our land, and if
correct.
we go back and say you've got that wrong, it's on our land, and we're inviting you to put a TPO on it.
Yep, and it's a new tree officer, I think, at
And
the
it's
moment.
a new tree officer who may not be aware of the previous correct.
Correct. So yeah.
Okay. Peter.
How much, David, would it cost to get an expert to define whether we have that plot of land?
Well, I suppose the first thing to do would be literally to go to our own solicitors and invite them to look at it and give us an opinion. Potentially, before we even spent any money doing that, I would like to take a quick look at it myself as best I can and see if I can come to any view. I got access to quite a lot of documentation with regard to that area, going back the best part of 100 years. So it might be possible to put something together, but the interesting thing is, whilst we may or may not have difficulty in asserting our ownership, the developer is likely to have precisely the same problem in trying to prove that they actually own it. Okay, the stakes for them are very high, and their budget to resolve this issue might be significant, but I certainly think it's going to be worth exploring. Maybe I could try and put something together that we could get to our solicitors and then invite them to tell us what it would cost to provide an opinion, and then we can take a decision as to whether we follow that up or not.
Can we follow that one through then, David? I know it's another work on you, but
well, I might want to liaise with Ian a bit on it as well, but I'm sure between us.
Yep. So just on the liaison with Ian, we've got. Just want to keep the lines clear on this. Ian is a technical expert on the area, isn't he? I
think you would probably like to think he's become one over the last few months.
I have local knowledge.
Yeah, I just want to be very cautious on this vested interest bit with this particular one here. Yeah.
I will front it up because I've been away from St. Peter's Road now since September 2015, so nobody can accuse me of having a personal interest in it.
Okay,
in that sense.
Thank you.
All right. Peter, just to wrap up.
Can I ask Ian and David a question? Firstly, obviously, if people in St. Peter's Avenue have actually been going out and past the hawthorns and using that for extra garden, after a number of years, doesn't that necessity mean that it actually then reverts to them anyway by just common law? And also, have we had anybody doing things on the sides of that tree from either side of the St. Peter's Avenue, doing the same sort of thing, keeping it tidy, etc., and making some sort of inroads into their property, or giving it.
I can't talk very specifically about the area on which the tree stands. It was a bit further down the road, but in terms of where I was, many years ago, residents along that side of St. Peter's Road got a letter from, and I think it might have been Bledsoe's from memory, written on behalf of the then owners of the land, complaining about the fact that people had put gates into it and were essentially using it as if they had a right of way over it and so on. And a number of us wrote back and said, well, sorry, we've been doing this for 20 years or more, and we've acquired rights to do it. So, basically give up and go away. And in fact, they did. We never actually heard any more, and people continued to do what they've done. And I used to walk down there to the footpath in order to then use the footpath across to Cotterstock or whatever. My neighbours, the Granges, used to cultivate the land behind. They had some very nice sort of raspberry canes and various other things growing behind there. It may be a bit of an issue for the developers in due course, because I think some of the owners who do back onto that site are going to argue that they have got rights that may mean that what they'll have to do is leave a kind of strip of land round the outside to enable people to continue to walk that way. It wouldn't stop development, but again, it might just be something they'll have to factor in.
Okay.
Would the
I'll leave that
line
one to you then, David.
incorporate that tree, David, so that, if the line had been pushed back by the people on St. Peter's Avenue, would that line then go back
Not
down and
necessarily,
past the
because
tree?
the trouble is the occupants of the houses kind of acted unilaterally and did things, and nobody objected for years, and nobody said you can't, and nobody said you've got to pay for it or anything else. But of course the tree didn't do anything. Nobody claimed ownership of the tree as far as I'm aware. So the same thing didn't happen in the vicinity of the tree.
Yeah.
The boundary may or may not have been pushed back, or at least rights acquired over it, but the tree itself, I fear, wasn't proactive enough to gain any.
Okay, fair enough.
All right, thank you. Next one is just that I need guidance from you guys now on what we want to ask of the Ombudsman if he does come out in our favour of our complaint against ENC. So I've put some things down on there, essentially, it's to place a hold on the medium and large developments. David?
I'm not at all convinced that the Ombudsman would have the power, for example, to do the first thing that we've said on there. In fact, I'm almost certain that he wouldn't, but I was going to try and spend some time looking into that, and time is something that's in relatively short supply, and I failed. But I'm far from convinced it could do that. And whilst there might theoretically be some possibility of seeking some kind of financial redress, and I'd love to think that we could get back the 90 grand or whatever it was that we put into that neighbourhood plan, I am somewhat sceptical. I think we need to be very, very careful that we only ask for that which the Ombudsman has the power to deliver, and where there is some likelihood that it could be done. And I think we are actually struggling with most of our wish list, however desirable all of it is.
Yeah. So we're going to ask him for something. Ian?
I'm sure I read an article a couple of months ago about an Ombudsman case with a noise complaint near an industrial estate in, I think it was Oxford or somewhere. And in the end, the Ombudsman, I think, found in favour of the complainant, or whatever they were called, and said, absolutely right, everything was done wrong. And I think the financial compensation was £3,000 split between 2 or 3 households. And they said it doesn't recognise the problem, but it's the most we can do. So I think they do have very limited powers to change things. They certainly can't reverse planning, as far as I understand.
Yep. So it's back onto what we're going to ask, isn't it? Even if we're going to only win a moral argument here.
There's nothing wrong with asking for the moon, is there? But accepting that you might just get a tree or something.
Very good. Jerry?
We could start off with asking for an apology, to acknowledge that they have compromised our neighbourhood plan and contributed to its failure at examination.
Yep. Well,
I think the points about the failure at examination and those more technical things that you've gone on to say, Tony, is right. The Ombudsman is not there to judge the morality or anything else of it. He's there to see whether the process was carried out correctly. So the points where we were told, for instance, not to do something would be important.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
yes.
Rather than asking for compensation because we think that they've done us down, we've got to say this needs to be overturned because it wasn't carried out correctly.
Right. Okay. So okay. I'll come back in a minute then, Peter.
I think that's correct. I don't think we can go any further than getting an apology from ENC on the grounds that they have made mistakes in connection with the neighbourhood plan, and that their own plan is flawed because of the mistakes they made on the neighbourhood plan.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. With that, it's possibly enough for me then to say, look, I'll take this we've got down here off the agenda, move it over to those apologies, because with those apologies and the recognition of the wrongdoing, it's enough for us to move on till tomorrow, for another day.
Yeah.
Okay. So if once they've recognised they've done something wrong, then we can use this in every other part of the development.
Well, then we can fight against the developments because we've got the proof that the ENC were incorrect.
All right. Okay. No, thank you. Then the other one was down to myself as well. I wanted to write a letter of complaint reference to St. Christopher's Drive. Now here I have to be careful again because I have a vested interest. But hopefully what I'm reporting there is purely factual and it's about what was said in the meeting. Certainly the numbers that were given on the noise report were definitely wrong, and the statements that they made about access did not give recognition to the true situation on the road. Jerry.
The only thing I thought when I read that about access to the school was that there was originally access to the school from our existing Ashton Manor estate, and the school never allowed it. So they
Well, it wasn't the school. No, it wasn't the school that banned it. It was the council.
Oh, okay, all right, my mistake. I thought it was the school that weren't happy with multiple accesses on the site.
Yeah. So my understanding was the council because of this very same drop becoming a drop-off area.
Okay. Right. Okay. I may be wrong there then. Okay. But again, I guess the same again could apply though, that whoever could object to an
The school can still object. Yes. Yeah. David.
Well, just picking up on your point about you're potentially being a bit compromised with this. Either the letter has to come from the council and be signed by the clerk, or alternatively, if we want it to come from a councillor, it could come from myself as the chair of the planning committee of the council.
Okay.
Either way, distance.
That's a good idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will draft it then and then send it off to yourself to edit and send.
Yeah, that would be fine by me.
Do you need us to vote on that, Tony, or are we okay?
Any objectors?
Just for the record.
That's right. No objection. So I'll draft it then and send it across to David, who will be able to edit it and then send it. Okay. Right. Any other relevant matters for report only?
Just one thing that's come up. Did anyone else, apart from my family, have that horrendous stink through the town last week? And if so, does anyone know where it came from? Because if it came from the sewage works, we've got another little trick in our sleeve, because it's proved everybody wrong, because it was horrendous up the north end of town. It was unbelievable, and Ian must have smelt it. So but does anyone know where it came from?
Maybe it was me. I'm used to it. The rumor has it was fertilizer rather than sewage, but rumor has it. So certainly residents close to the sewage farm didn't smell it particularly strongly more than anyone else. That's what I've been told.
Right.
Those farmers.
That's a
Peter?
shame.
It
That's
was
a shame.
very
I thought we'd
bad.
have another one.
Very
another one
badly in
more there.
Waitrose and down where I am.
Hmm.
It was awful. I had to close the shop down because it was stinking out the whole premises.
All right. No, I didn't. But Ian?
Just about the bridge. I got quite bored last week and emailed lots of people asking, had anyone at Highways told Stagecoach that the bridge was shutting and going to be reopened on Thursday night? And the answer came back that they had just after they got my email. Stagecoach have got back in touch saying they're going to come back with a new timetable that they'd like help being spread around town. But it's Tuesday night. The bridge is supposedly reopening on Thursday, so presumably Friday's bus might be going a different route and a different timetable. But at the moment, it's no response from anyone. So who knows? But there we are.
I mean, just the interesting twist on that one is that I think a lot of the town appreciate the route down about New Road at the moment.
They do.
You know, and if
Apart
Stagecoach.
from the people that live on New Road.
Yeah, it's got two sides.
Yeah, but the people that on New Road that want to use the bus appreciate it. You know, so yeah, it is a complicated one, but maybe stay out of it then. So, David, did you want to say?
Well, it was just that probably only one of our number, apart from myself, will remember our clerk Barbara Ding. But Barbara's just had a second serious eye operation and she's recuperating, I believe. And I thought it would be rather a nice gesture if the town council wrote her, in effect, a little get well message to say that we're thinking about her because, yeah, she's been through quite a lot. It's a serious operation. She's had quite serious sight problems. And I thought it might be a nice gesture if others agreed.
Yes, certainly.
Absolutely.
So, rather than you again, who is it? Is it Val that knows her?
I wouldn't
No better than.
know better than myself, but I think it probably could come from the council and be signed by the clerk or indeed by yourself as mayor.
Yeah.
I can sort that out.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thank you. Right. Anything else from anybody? No. Well, I want to thank Nadine for sitting there through all of this. Thank you, Nadine.
Thanks. Quite interesting.
Not really.
All right, then. So are we officially on summer recess now? Yeah. Okay.
Go and have a good time now.
For those of you who haven't had a holiday, then go and have a holiday. Ian, you've had yours, so
They're still going on.
Just one point, Mayor. Obviously, there were no accounts for payment tonight because they're not ready. But in fact, we're likely to need to do that at some point this month. So we might have to convene an extra meeting, if nothing else, just to pass various accounts for payment, I'd have thought.
Yeah, we've done it. I think that's when you lost connection, wasn't it?
It's when you went and got
right.
your
Well, I
papers
did
in
lose
the other room.
connection at one point. If I missed it, I apologise.
yeah. Okay, Jerry.
I was just going to say, haven't we delegated authority to Emma to do a lot of that anyway?
Yeah. The list, I think the list of payments that I gave you tonight wasn't everything because she said to Paul, you don't have to do an exhaustive list of everything, just get the important ones on there tonight to let you know. Yeah.
Oh, very good then. So we're not doing too bad time-wise. Better than my last performance. All right then. Thank you all, and
Thank you. Have a wonderful holiday, everybody.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Right.
Enjoy the sunshine. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.